Everybody, welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to continue where we left off yesterday in this book entitled The Global Vatican by former U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See, Francis Rooney, who served as ambassador from 2005 to 2008. And we continue to inform the listeners of just how extensive the United States is in cooperation with the papacy, the man of sin, the son of perdition. And if you do not believe that the papacy is the man of sin, the son of perdition, the Antichrist of the Bible, then you're not Protestant, because Protestantism is based on the belief, the incontrovertible belief that the papacy is, was, and always will be the Antichrist, and that every pope who sits upon that papal throne fulfills the role of Antichrist. Just as the presidency of the United States lives on from president to president to president, so does the Antichrist from pope to pope to pope. Every pope is the Antichrist. The office that he holds is the Antichrist. And that was the belief of the Protestant reformers. That's the belief of the Protestants today. That will never change, or Protestantism ceases to exist. And it was Vatican Council II that sought to destroy Protestantism. And Vatican Council II could not have taken place but for the belief in futurism, the belief that the Antichrist of the Bible is one single individual who comes sometime down in history just before Christ's return. That's a lie. That's a Jesuit-inspired lie to destroy the Protestant Reformation, to destroy the protest against Antichrist. Now that the so-called Protestant world, or the evangelical world, has joined Vatican Council II and therefore submitted to the authority of the papacy, which they no longer see as the Antichrist, Protestantism is an extreme minority in this country. And since there is no protest, and Vatican Council II literally vanquished what used to be known as Protestantism, now holding a futurist belief, the Roman Catholic Church is free to control our government, as it controlled the governments of Europe during the Old World Order. The New World Order is simply the Old World Order restored. And this book is, from cover to cover, an expose of just how deep and just how broad is the communion between the government of the United States and the Antichrist power, the papacy. The United States has literally become the battle axe, the world police, the world cop, to bring all nations to the New World Order. Okay? The United States imposes its will upon foreign nations, hiding under a disguise of concern for human rights and one thing and another, and the fight against disease and poverty, simply to overthrow governments and to put governments in that are friendly to the New World Order, to the papacy. That's the role of the United States of America. And one can only imagine the reaction that the Protestant reformers would have, especially the Protestant colonists who brought life and liberty to this wilderness that had never once heard the gospel before. Those Protestants who gave us liberty, the liberty in Jesus Christ, what would they think if they could see the United States today? Now we're going to continue where we left off, beginning at the beginning of the paragraph where we concluded yesterday. It's the last paragraph on page 184 if you're following along in your own copy of the book. Now we've moved our focus to South and Central America, and the United States' role on behalf of the papacy to control and overthrow governments in South and Central America. It says in 2006, the United States and the Holy See were in broad agreement that several regimes in power in Latin America were inhospitable to freedom and human rights. Okay, there's the cloak. They're all concerned about freedom and human rights. That's the public perception. And it says Venezuela was the most obvious instance of this, but Bolivia, Ecuador, and Nicaragua, along with a few Caribbean countries, had joined Venezuela in a new organization called the Bolivian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, or ALBA. One leading United States think tank described ALBA as, quote, the fulcrum for anti-Americanism in the Americas, unquote. So they're going to demonize this organization as being anti-American. Okay? You don't want to make it public that the papacy has any concern about this. You want this to look this regime change, this control of governments, this forced influence, this coercion from the United States. You want the blame for all of this to fall upon the United States, not the papacy. Okay? The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords in Rome moves its agenda through cooperative third parties, that being the United States of America. The United States of America does the papacy's will in South and Central America and around the world, and takes the blame away from the papacy, protects the sanctity, protects the good public image of the Vatican. This is why I say the United States is the battle axe for the papacy. So now it's made to be the conditions in South and Central America are the great concerns are human rights and anti-Americanism. That's what the world must believe in order to cloak the true agenda of the United States in South and Central America. It says the organization's founding, we're speaking of ALBA now, ALBA, the organization's founding principle is to counter the free trade area of the Americas, a program advanced by the United States. Now, what's the free trade? Listen, Roman Catholic canon law, in the form of the papal encyclical, and I'll just name one, there have been many that dealt with this, Caritas in Veritate, which states that all the earth's goods must be shared in common. We're talking a global socialism is what it amounts to. And that's going to be the form and fashion of the New World Order. It's going to mirror the Old World Order. The Pope in the Old World Order claimed to own the earth, the sea, the air, the earth, and all that in there is. Okay? And it were the people, the serfs that farmed the land. It was the governments of the various nations that oversaw the agriculture, but it was the papacy that owned the ground. It was the papacy that reaped the benefit. The people were enslaved, and they were destitute and eked out a meager living, tilling the land for the state, which managed the land for the papacy. Okay, so everything came from a common storehouse, the papacy. Everybody gave directly or indirectly to the church, and then received everything from the church. The papacy was in a position to redistribute the wealth. As a matter of fact, it didn't have to redistribute the wealth. The papacy had all the wealth and all the power. Okay? So we're building a global example of that. Global socialism. Everything to the church and everything from the church. And the United States is accomplishing this for the papacy in South America and here in the United States. You pay exorbitant taxes because you give everything to the church. Now, obviously, people are going to say, no, wait a minute, Tom, we give it to the state. Yes, but the state serves the church. So everything to the church and everything from the church. You have to have a license from the state, which is the church, to do anything by way of business. You have to pay your taxes, and then then if you do not receive benefits, or as they call entitlements from the state, then the whole purpose of it is to receive everything from the state. I hope I'm explaining. I feel a little clumsy in describing this right now. It should just roll off my tongue. I've been talking about it for 10 years. But the state becomes the agent of the church, and it manages all internal affairs. Everything goes to the state, and then everything is returned from the state. All your entitlements, benefits, licenses, your ability to work, your ability to buy and sell, it all comes from the state. Everything to the state, everything from the state. That's Roman Catholic canon law. That's the way the old world order operated. That's the way the new world order is going to operate. Now, Caritas in Veritate and not Unum Sanctum. It'll come to me in a minute. Many various papal encyclicals, which constitute Roman Catholic canon law, make this the law of the world. This system, this global socialist system. And it is the United States that is becoming more and more socialist because of Roman Catholic influence now that Vatican Council II has vanquished Protestantism. There's nobody protesting it. And even if they do, they protest it on a false basis. It's against socialism that they protest, which leaves the papacy completely exonerated of having anything to do with the new socialist state. You need to put the blame where it belongs. The grand socialist of the world is the papacy, and he controls the governments of the world, particularly the United States, and it's the United States that is conquering the rest of the world for the papacy. Through diplomacy, through economic sanction, through military intervention, and on and on and on, even to the degree of regime change. You've seen it all over the world. I don't need to enumerate them for you. If you know anything about the news, you know how this system operates. You've just never known that the papacy was involved in all of this. Worse than that, you've never been told that the papacy is the Antichrist of the Bible. Okay? I hope I've made some headway with some of my listeners. Now, painted in terms of anti-Americanism and violation of human rights, the United States is going to get involved now, and the Vatican's going to win. It says the organization's founding principle is to counter the free trade area of the Americas, a program advanced by the United States. Free trade is simply other words to describe the tenets of Caritas in Veritate, charity in truth, where the Pope, who calls it charity, is able to confiscate all of your goods that they find that are excess to your needs, and then redistribute those goods, whether they be jobs, whether they be material blessings, whether you have, you might possibly have 2 automobiles, and if the state, which is the agent of the church, determines that you really only need 1 vehicle, they have the right to take your vehicle. You get to call it charity. And if it's not paid for, you get to continue to pay for it because that's your charitable gift to the common good. See? And then through solidarity and subsidiarity, we have street level enforcers of this new common good. And you get to call it charity, where the Bible calls it theft. It's an antichrist system from beginning to end. They call it socialism, but it is theft. State-sponsored, church-instigated, Roman Catholic Church-instigated theft. Okay? The power to tax is the power to tyrannize. And that is the church, the Roman Catholic Church. You can call it Peter's Pence. You can call it taxation. You can call it anything you want. But it is one thing and one thing only. The church, the Roman Catholic Church, controlling the entire economic and social and political system of this world. And the governments of the world are implementing Roman Catholic canon law without ever telling the people what it's all about. All right. I hope this is sinking in. The organization's founding principle is to counter the free trade area of the Americas, a program advanced by the United States. Okay? United States is promoting socialism. Okay? They don't think much of, commercialism. It's because that leaves every man in charge of his own wealth, to make his own decisions, to benefit those who he chooses. Look, if I am self-employed and I make so much money and I have to pay it all to the state gets to spend my money for me. And if the state is wicked, which it is, it's going to benefit the wicked because they're going to redistribute my wealth, my hard-earned money, to support those who are anti-Christ in their belief and their way of life. Okay? Socialism. But if I am left in charge of the wealth generated by my hard labor, which rightly belongs to me, then I get to spend my money as I see fit. I get to be truly charitable. And if I find a righteous man who has been wronged and suffering financially or any other way, I have my wealth to freely give out of the goodness of my heart, expecting nothing in return, to help strengthen my spiritual brother. Okay? I wouldn't give my money to a drug addict who beats his wife, abuses his children, steals from his neighbors in order to support his drug habit, robs banks, kills people, does whatever he wants to do, completely lawless. I would not give my money. Let him pray to his own God, which is no God at all. You see, society has no pressure to promote the Christian life. But the state makes sure that that deadbeat has a roof over his head, has medical care, has the basic necessities of life, even though he is destructive of life in every way, and perpetrates the evil. And the evil spreads and spreads. As long as the system will support the wicked, then the wicked are strengthened and the righteous are made poor. Is this what God has for his people? He said, I would that you had life and you have it more abundantly, didn't he? Well, the abundant life is a righteous life, not a life of sin and license. And the system, the entire socialist papal system, is just a way to take from the righteous and to give to the wicked, to weaken the righteous and to strengthen the wicked. The whole system is built to be anti-Christ from beginning to end. And it is the United States that is adopting socialism as its means. Every time you have to plead to the government to get something, you have fallen victim, you have given up your freedom, and you have been made victim and dependent upon a tyrant. And this is exactly why Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not eat from the king's table. They understood this principle. Nebuchadnezzar was a wicked king, and wickedness ruled and reigned in Babylon. And their religion was wicked. And Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego understood the fallacy of Babylonianism. Why don't we understand the same things that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego understood and not eat any longer from the king's table? Because he takes from the righteous and gives to the wicked. And if you get on First Amendment Radio, or if you get on amateur radio and you begin to educate people about this, all you get is wall-to-wall persecution. They come out of the walls to condemn you. They love their socialist system. They think it's God's work, but it is not God's work. It is the work of Antichrist. Theft is still a commandment of God. Thou shalt not steal. That applies to you. That applies to the government. Okay? We need to call sin what it is. You know what the problem is? They teach in the churches, almost universally, every church that I've been to says the law is dead, crucified with Christ. You know what that makes us? That makes us lawless. And it also, when we call ourselves Christians and spread that cockamamie nonsense, we make Christ a minister of unrighteousness. And we can then freely lump Christ in with this socialist system and make it look like it was his idea. And they make the example of when the Israelites were going to be the diaspora after 70 or prior to 70 AD, Jesus told them to sell all your goods and get out of town. God was going to have the temple destroyed, the nation of Israel was going to be destroyed, and everybody sold their goods and they helped one another. They shared their wealth and they moved out. Otherwise, they were going to be destroyed by the Roman armies in 70 AD, and millions were destroyed. The city was besieged by Rome, and they obeyed. And they used the example of this selling all their properties and then sharing their wealth and helping them move out of the land as God's justification for this socialist system. It never was socialist before. Everyone had their own land. Every tribe of Israel had its own land. They raised their own crops. They benefited from it. They helped one another charitably. That was the system that God instituted. It only became necessary to share their wealth when they all had to move en masse. And if there were poor among the righteous, then they had no means to move out. So it was necessary for God's people to share their wealth in order that all the righteous could move out of Israel. All right? So they take these examples out of the Bible and they use this to justify a socialist system. Socialism among the righteous is God's way if it's necessary. Okay? But the basic idea of the commonwealth of God is that everyone has their own property. Otherwise, there'd be no commandment, thou shalt not steal. Okay? How do you steal something that doesn't belong to anybody, but it belongs to everyone in common? So they're not going to call this new caritas and veritate stealing. They're going to call it charity. You see how they've twisted the truth? Do you see how the United States is the battle axe for Rome and wickedness is going to win the day? This world is ripe for God's judgment. And it's Christians who are promoting this socialist system. We must repent and come back to the law of God, the law of righteousness, and the law of liberty. In Jesus' name, return to the Protestant Reformation. Now, after the break, we'll continue our reading and discussion of how the United States influences Central South America and makes us all papal socialists. We'll be back right after this.
I I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings and to his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation, under our Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Welcome back from the break. You're listening to the second half hour of Inquisition Update. If you'd like to support Inquisition Update, please support First Amendment Radio, who pays the bills. And if you'd like to contact me, please do so directly. My email address is tom@seawaves.us. tom@seawaves.us. Now, we're continuing where we left off before the break. It says we're speaking of ALBA, A-L-B-A. The organization's founding principle is to counter the free trade area of the Americas, a program advanced by the United States. It's a program advanced by the Vatican. The United States is implementing it. Free trade is global socialism. That's just words to cover up what it really is. Free trade equals global socialism. All right, a global communist state. Everything is shared in common. The people own nothing. As it says in Caritas in Veritate, everything that is owned privately has upon it a prior social mortgage, a prior social commitment, a prior social obligation. If you have anything in excess, it is to be taken to serve the common good. Okay? The state is going to do that on a street level basis. Anything you have in excess that the state, which is the agent of the church, finds in excess to your needs, they will take it. Okay? And give it to someone else. And they don't care if he's a deadbeat, a murderer, whatever. If he's not incarcerated, if he's free to roam the streets, he has to have shelter and clothing and automobile and education and health care and everything else. Okay? And it says ALBA. Now look. This organization fighting the free trade area. You know what's really fighting? These Central and South American countries engaged in ALBA. They're fighting papal law, Roman Catholic canon law, and the United States is the defender and the enforcer of Roman Catholic canon law. Okay, so you make it look like anti-Americanism, not anti-popery. The United States takes the blame. He says, and it should have the blame. Listen, if it's going to be the battle axe for the Pope, the United States ought to take the blame. There's nothing in store for the United States but annihilation when Christ returns. Yes, he will save his elect, what few there are. But this country's going to be destroyed. This whole world is going to be renovated. It is sick with sin just like it was before the flood. No understanding. God is going to set us right, and we need to get right now. All right? ALBA has been persistently hostile to U.S. interests and ideals. That means ALBA is hostile to papal ideals. He says, meanwhile, close relations between Caracas, Venezuela, and Tehran, Iran, have given the nuclear-ambitious Iranian government access and influence as a trade partner with ALBA nations in Latin America. So now we interject a threat of nuclear destruction because ALBA's getting involved with Tehran, Iran. Okay, what's that to do? To get the world's focus on Central and South America. The papacy has an agenda through the United States, and in order to motivate American people through fear and terror of Iranian nuclear weapons raining down on this country, we've got to stop this ALBA. Okay, we got to get involved politically with Central and South America. We have to advance papal agenda in South and Central America. Don't lose sight of the fact who's behind all this. He says Hugo Chavez made it clear that he hoped to use his friendship with Iran. Who's coaching Hugo Chavez right here? Well, the Jesuits, of course, to bring fear into the equation. Fear motivates people. Fear motivates papal politicians. It justifies whatever diabolical methods they want to use to get in control of this organization. Look, if everyone's fearful of nuclear annihilation, no rules apply. Right? Isn't that right? If there's a threat of nuclear weapons on this country, you wouldn't enforce any rule, right? You could use any form of deception, lie, whatever you could to defeat your enemy so they couldn't nuke this country. It works every time. It works every time. The American people suck right into this trap. Hugo Chavez made it clear that he hoped to use his friendship with Iran. They're using Iran as a threat to the United States, as a threat to the Middle East, and on and on and on. It's just a motivating factor for more and more and more global, that is, papal influence all over the world. Okay? The government of Iran is just as much answerable to the papacy as anyone else. Right now, he needs a global boogeyman, and he picked Iran. And we're all falling for it. It says Hugo Chavez made it clear that he hoped to use his friendship with Iran to undermine U.S. global influence. Okay? There's an admission. U.S. global influence, that's what it is. U.S. or papal global influence. He says there were even alarming press reports not officially confirmed that Chavez had offered arms and Venezuelan missile sites to Iran. So here we go with the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again, right? You know, any shot fired will be seen as a hostile attack by the Soviet Union upon the United States, and a full retaliatory response will result. Isn't that what Kennedy said? Scared the bejeebers out of everybody in this country. I lived at the time. We practiced duck and cover. I mean, that was part of our education. They enforced the fear. Duck and cover. The alarm would ring and all of us kids would dive underneath our desk and cover our heads, and it was so dramatic. Made an imprint on every one of our minds. Terror, morning, noon, and night. Terror, worried about nuclear annihilation. That the United States might be incinerated by the Russians. And what'd we get? More papal control. It worked before. Nobody caught on. Nobody's talking about the papacy being involved in this, so they can do it again. They're free to do it again, and again, and again, and again. So here we have Jesuit-controlled Chavez leaving open the possibility that he might allow Iranians to occupy missile sites that would easily strike the United States of America. You think the American people are going to get involved? Oh, yeah, they'll vote for any politician that'll get Chavez out of office and put more and more American influence, which is more and more papal influence. Okay? Who can make war with the beast? Only those that have their eyes opened. Only those whom God has opened their eyes to the deceiver, the man of sin, the son of perdition. And if you're a futurist, you don't have a clue. You don't have a clue, and you're not going to get a clue. If you're a futurist, you're blind, and there's nobody can shine a light in your eyes. They're so fastly tight shut that you can't see anything. This blind hope that the Antichrist is just one single individual that comes just before Christ's return. And by the way, we don't have to worry about him either, because we're going to be raptured out of here. You talk about a candy store. Oh, it tastes so sweet, doesn't it? But it's poison. Sweet in your mouth and sour in your belly. That's the Jesuit lie that you've been taught all your life, just like I was. I know of whom I'm speaking. I'm speaking of myself. You've got to repent of futurism. You absolutely must repent of this Jesuit lie that has deceived you and blinded you to the truth. History and the Bible tell the truth. You better get your Bible out. You better get your history book out and find out how Bible prophecy is being fulfilled in the papacy. Right? Right? He's the Antichrist. He's not the vicar of Christ. He does not represent Jesus Christ. His mouth is all full of Jesus Christ, and you believe that malarkey when his actions and his fruit run contrary to everything he says. You believe he's a man of peace, that he cares about human rights? Nonsense! He's the Antichrist of the Bible. The Bible describes him perfectly. And we've got no excuse. We've got no excuse. We live in a land that carries papal propaganda, papal agenda, papal everything all over this world. And nobody protests. To our own condemnation, we remain silent and scared and timid and terrorized. Where's the strength of the Spirit of God in his people? Was David a coward? Was Daniel a coward? Was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego a coward when they pointed their finger in Nebuchadnezzar's face and said, "You may throw us in the fiery furnace, but our God can deliver us. And even if he doesn't, we will not bow down to your image. We will not submit to your Antichrist authority." Okay? And they were thrown in the fiery furnace. And Christ was among them. And they all came out without even the smell of smoke on their clothes. That's the God I serve. I do not serve an earthly government. The government is not my God. Worse than that, he serves Antichrist. It's time for us to get it through our thick heads. There's no pie in the sky rapture. There's no pie in the sky future Antichrist. You've been living under the Antichrist control all of your life. Now that's real terror. Not make-believe terror. That's real terror. That's spiritual terror. That's eternal terror. We've got to repent. We can't speak Jesus out of our mouth and serve Antichrist our entire lives and be completely ignorant of it. When we carry the truth in our hands, we can read every word of the truth from cover to cover in the Bible. No more craftily devised fables like futurism should destroy God's people any longer. So we got Chavez, we got the government of Iran, we got the government of the United States, and above it all, we got the papacy working this charade in Central and South America to bring about Roman Catholic canon law. More papal control in South and Central America and more control of the papacy in the United States of America. It all has the same end. Now it says, whatever truth of these reports about Iran, Alba was apparently on the move in 2006. Daniel Ortega returned to power in Nicaragua that year, and Rafael Correa was elected in Ecuador, giving impetus to Alba and adding to the number of countries in Latin America with no sitting U.S. ambassador. No sitting U.S. ambassador. Why? They cut ties. They cut ties with the United States. They didn't like United States intervention. You know, maybe these Roman Catholic countries in South and Central America would just as soon not have anything to do with Roman Catholic canon law, perhaps. You think? Maybe? Maybe they're sick and tired of papal control. Although they never would know that it was papal control, that it oppressed them beyond ability to have a happy, abundant life. All right? They're just blindly trying to seek their own without Roman Catholic or without the United States involvement. Look, if the United States was really trying to free those people, it would be one thing. But that's not the purpose of all this. In the name of human rights, they tyrannize and subjugate. Every man, woman, and child on the planet must be subject to the Roman pontiff. That's what they believe is Christianity. Your government believes that's Christianity. To be subject to the Roman pontiff. To the Antichrist. He says Nestor Kirchner of Argentina acted more moderately than some others, but he was dependent on Venezuela for liquidity, amply supplied by the Chavez government purchase of Argentine debt. The wave of democratization that passed across Latin America in the 80s replaced a series of military dictatorships had originally appeared as progress, but now it seemed to be moving backward. The United States, or rather the anti-United States socialist-leaning movements in the region mastered the democratic process to achieve their own anti-democratic objectives. Many Many Catholics in Latin America, as in Europe and the United States, had now listen to this. Listen to this. It looks like Protestantism was beginning to make progress in South America. Listen, many Catholics in Latin America, as in Europe and the United States, had either lapsed in their practice of the faith that is Roman Catholicism, or turn to new evangelical Protestant sects. Okay? They were leaving the Roman Catholic Church. They were swearing off Catholicism and joining Protestant churches. Now, let's assume that leaving of the Roman Catholic Church and joining Protestant churches was because the Protestant churches were teaching Protestant belief that the Pope is the Antichrist and that the United States of America is the battle axe for the Pope. Do you suppose that's what maybe they're not futurists down there in South America. I haven't been down there. I don't know what they teach. But here, Rome's losing sheep to the Protestant church in South America. It says the percentage of Latin Americans who labeled themselves Catholic fell from 80% in 1995 to 71% in 2005, while the number of self-identified Protestants rose from 3% to 13%. Now listen carefully. He says, nonetheless, the church, that is the Roman Catholic Church, remained powerful and influential. So what did he just admit to you? That the Roman Catholic Church, even with the advance of Protestantism, is powerful and influential in South America. Control the government, right? You think it might be any different here in the United States of America? The United States is involved in South and Central America to give more and more and more power and strength to the papacy. Whether or not Protestantism exists. That's the whole purpose of the United States involvement. Around the world, he says more than 300 million Latin Americans still identified themselves as Catholic. A more remarkable number reported in a 2005 poll was that 73% of Latin Americans expressed confidence in the Roman Catholic Church. The church, in other words, remained a trusted beacon in the risky world of Latin American politics, where corruption and economic collapse were common and civil institutions were fragile. Here's another admission. Wherever the Roman Catholic Church has power, you have, excuse me again, you have corruption, you have Vatican control in government, you have economic collapse, and the destruction of civil institutions. In other words, institutions run by the people. The people become subject to the government, which controls the papacy. I mean, this author is admitting what is wrong, and yet defending it. He says, while in Washington at the Chiefs of Mission Conference in January, I had met with Latin American experts in the State Department to discuss engaging the Holy See as a more forceful partner in promoting freedom, human rights, and democracy in Latin America. You believe that garbage? Do you believe that garbage? I don't. They don't promote human rights. They don't promote democracy. That is, unless, of course, Rome is in complete control of all of it. So that's the deal. Rome's in control of democracy and human rights and promoting freedom. You know what? I've said it before. I hope I'm not repeating myself to too many listeners. You know what freedom is, according to Roman Catholic canon law? Freedom to be Catholic without competition. That's what freedom is. Every time you hear the papacy talking about freedom, that's what is meant. Okay? We tolerate other religions so long as we have to, but when we get control, we roar like a lion. Okay? You're going to remain Protestant in a Catholic country, you be second, third, and fourth class citizen. You probably be imprisoned. They're going to make you out to be some kind of a social or governmental threat. You know? He says, while in Washington at the Chiefs of Mission Conference in January, I had met with Latin American experts in the State Department to discuss engaging the Holy See as a more forceful partner in promoting freedom, human rights, and democracy in Latin America. They're admitting Rome's behind this. This is an admission that Rome's behind the agenda, the American agenda in South America. He says, now a month later, in early February, just a few days before Mrs. Bush's visit, Ambassador Tom Shannon, when serving as Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, he's currently the U.S. Ambassador to Brazil, came to Rome to discuss Latin American affairs. He went to the Vatican and met with Archbishop Sandri and Archbishop Giovanni Loyola, the respective heads of the first and second sections. Okay, these big people in the Vatican. Now, also in attendance were about half a dozen monsignors from the Secretary of State. The presence of these monsignors reflected the serious interest of that the Holy See took in Shannon's visit and the issues presented by Latin America today. Here was an excellent opportunity for a high-ranking U.S. official to express our hope that the Church, the Roman Catholic Church, might leverage, that is, coerce, its moral authority, that is, Roman Catholic canon law, in Latin America to oppose Chavez's human rights violations. Now remember, Chavez is a papist, Chavez is Roman Catholic, Chavez is the one who's violating human rights, and the Pope's going to come to the rescue of the people. Who's Chavez working for? Well, of course he's working for the papacy. You can't get more papal involvement unless you have a Catholic in government that is cooperating and willing to take the heat off of the papacy. So Chavez goes around destroying people's human rights, abusing human beings. The papacy comes to the rescue, which is what the agenda was all about in the first place. Why can't the world people see past this nonsense? He says we reinforced this message a few weeks after Tom Shannon's visit on February 21st, when Kathleen and I hosted a bon voyage dinner at Villa Richardson for Archbishop Pietro Sambi. Archbishop Sambi, not to be confused with Archbishop Sandri, the Sostituto, was about to move to Washington to become the new papal nuncio to the United States. We've got to have our papal nuncio. You know, this country can't run without a papal nuncio. I mean, that's the umbilical cord from the United States to the mother church. You have to have a papal nuncio, or the nutrition doesn't flow from the mother to the baby, from the beast to the image of the beast. We must have a papal nuncio. And there's no protest. No protest. Unbelievable. There's no protest in this country anymore. I'm going to just stop and let us think about that until we meet again on Monday.